Okay, so when I was around 9, I was staying with my aunt, and I wanted chocolate, and she said no, because I'd ruined my dinner. And I said, but you have Milky Way. And Milky Way is a sweet you can eat between meals without ruining your appetite. And she obviously despaired at the influence of advertising on the young mind, but I got chocolate. And the two lessons I take from that is that one, no one campaigns like a child armed with a slogan. And two, giving your campaigners a memorable message really helps them to spread it for you. But how do we create memorable messages? Good copywriting is hard. And it's hard because when it's good, it's simple but not simplistic. And fake news is often very simplistic, which Rosie talked about a little bit earlier. Fake news works for people because it reduces really complex issues to reductive sound bites. And I think that's sometimes what policy teams really fear when campaigners or comms people come to them and say, no, we need to simplify our messages. They get that fear of like, but you're going to ruin all the nuance. But I think consolidating the depth of a message into clear, compelling, memorable copy has been the bedrock of many campaigns throughout history. So I went back to look through some of those campaigns, and I had a couple of lessons that I took from them that I wanted to share with you. Just on a side note, obviously I was fairly limited by language to English, and there are obviously many, many great campaigns throughout history across the world. So this will be fairly undiverse in its approach to historical messages. There are obviously loads of really great examples, and especially around kind of things like propaganda posters, I found loads of what really looked like really, really good examples from China and India and Russia and places like that, but because I'm focused on language and I don't speak those languages, I wasn't able to share them. And then just another point to say that obviously graphics and other kind of content is really key to campaigns too, but obviously I'm focusing on language. So with that in mind, firstly, clarity is key. So this is probably a familiar example from Britain, from the First World War. And what I liked about these two examples is that in the first version, it's really clear to the reader what's been asked of them. But it doesn't provide any context for why they should eat less bread. The second version, though, basically puts that requested action in the context of the war effort. And while the copy is still really, really simple, it links the urgency and power of the war effort with the action that people are being asked to take. So it keeps it simple, but it does that job in a little bit more of a compelling way. Secondly, less is more. Oh, no. I shouldn't go on. Less is more. Oh yeah, I should have gone on, sorry. Less is more. So these are two examples, posters from the Irish political party Fianna Fáil from the 30s or 40s. I couldn't quite pin down an exact date. But what I found really interesting about these is they basically have the exact same message. They're trying to say the exact same thing. But the first one is trying to make the point, but then they couldn't resist cramming in a few extra compelling campaign messages. It's like lower taxes. Make sure you tell them about the lower taxes. Whereas the second one is very focused on that message around Fianna Fáil are in government. If you vote us for us again, we'll keep making the progress to make life better for all of you. And it's a very simple, compelling message that they've kept really simple in the second poster, but really overtaxed in the first one. Just for the record, this is not an endorsement for Fianna Fáil. Don't endorse them. And then thirdly, not unfamiliar to anyone really in the room, but right audience, right message, right time. The audience is not the general public, ever, or very rarely. And I liked these two examples from the women's suffrage movement from the US, because obviously that votes for women, those votes for women badges, that's the campaign goal. It summarizes it really clearly. This is what we want. This is what we're trying to do. The second badge, Rally for the Women's Suffrage Amendment, still impressive that they managed to get that on a badge. But that really speaks to a milestone within the campaign. So it's not the overall campaign goal, but it's a particular moment. And I think they both have real value, but you wouldn't use necessarily the Rally for Women's Suffrage Amendment message for a cold audience, because that means nothing to anyone who doesn't understand the wider implications of this particular moment, where Votes for Women speaks to that colder audience. And often I think the same campaign copy gets used for different parts of the campaigns, for different audiences who might be at very different stages of engagement with the issue. But that usually happens because campaigners' to-do lists look like this. I think time is the greatest stumbling block to good copy, creating great campaign copy. I mean, all of you in the room, how many times have you had, you've literally just managed to get the copy drafted through 5 or more levels of sign-off, literally right before launch, and then suddenly you're in the throes of the campaign, and there's just not really much more time to think about it. And especially thinking about different versions for different audiences. But really for me, to win people over and to counter, especially to counter simplistic messages with ones that are clear, concise, focused on the right people at the right time, we really need to start building time into campaigns for copy and time to hone messages. And I think that's partially in the planning stage. Sometimes we don't actually take the time to name copywriting as a key part of our campaigning. And even in the planning stage and beyond, we don't think about that time and naming that time and really explaining and acknowledging to senior managers how essential it is to give copy time, to give it time to hone it, to iterate it, and to test it as well. But basically, that is my rallying call, is to give it time, give it space, and really fight for that so that you end up with something like this and not something like this. Thank you.